allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have everyone here except Eric? Eric may be joining us.
He's gonna try, yeah.
So we'll keep an eye out for him.
Okay.
Start with comments from the public. Or is there anybody here who would like to make a comment, or are you part of the presentations? Yes, there. No hands raised. We will move forward. This has comments from the board members now, but I'm going to take the prerogative and move that to after the presentations, and we'll come back and have a discussion if we want to. So we'll jump right into the presentations and fiscal year 2026 budget. And I understand we want to start with Sue. Is that right? So Sue Consoli,
Sure.
Department of Social Services, you are up.
Okay, so we can jump right to the third page budget overview. So basically you will see that the only increase in my budget is actually just basically the cost of living, 2.5%. The benefits and the salaries that go up every year, commensurately. Operations have stayed flat. They are exactly the same. And that makes my total budget up the 2.5%. Staffing structure has stayed the same. We're on the fourth page. And the you can see the percentage that constitutes benefits and constitutes the salary budget, which is predominantly my whole budget. It's a service job, so that's what it is. And I have been running, similar programs that I've run every year. So I won't kind of go over those again, but I did add this year with the ARPA funding that we had, I did add the arts and music program for the seniors, and we have continued that, and it's really well received. And also we had done a lot of help with evictions, rental issues, foreclosure issues, tax issues. And we also helped with food, and we also help with jobs and a lot of other things with the ARPA funding this year. And we've moved some people to a better place, and hopefully off services by next year. Actually 3 are off services this year. So I'm pretty happy with that. Might not seem like a big number, but usually there's no number. So to me, that's a pretty big number that we were able to move off. Nothing is going up. My budget's pretty straightforward. Cost containment continues to happen with my social service help days, grants that I brought in separately, state programs that we bring in like energy assistance. So that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward budget this year.
Are you ready for questions, Sue? Are you ready for questions?
I'm ready for questions. If you've got them, hopefully I have some answers.
Questions from the board for Sue? George?
Sue, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
So in your presentation, first of all, thank you for the presentation. For your presentation, you had a couple items relating to ARPA funding in terms of the benefits gained from the ARPA funding. When will that run out? And when it runs out, will you ask for additional funding from other sources then to continue those programs?
Yeah, so without a crystal ball, I can't tell you that I will be asking for funds that might replace what I have for ARPA funds. The goal of the ARPA funds was to get folks back on track. Several of our folks got off track during the COVID years, and the reason for the ARPA funds was to get them back on track. That has remained a goal, and that's working out. We're going to have increases in folks that are in need, and our town population continues to grow. So percentage-wise, that's going to continue to be an issue. Again, I don't have a crystal ball for the future. I'm doing my best to do what I can to, to keep that contained now. And right now I haven't had to ask for anything else. And I really haven't asked for, there hasn't been an increase in my budget outside of hours in years, and that included before I got the ARPA funds.
Okay, George again?
And a follow-up question, do you have a ballpark idea of how much the ARPA fund was?
Yes, and we do still have some ARPA funds. They ran out at the end of December, but with allocation for specific items, they do continue through the end of 26. I anticipate the ARPA funding I have to probably be run out by the end of this year, because we have been using it. And altogether, I had asked for ARPA funds in the neighborhood of around 200,000. Some of that money went directly to things like the HEAT program, which was 40,000 of it, you know, in large clips like that. And I'm going to say there was a pretty good, I mean, I had it, I don't have that in front of me all delineated right now, but I did. And we have stuck to the points that we had said that we were going to use those funds for. And the other largest one I'm going to say was housing, because that's a pretty big bite when there's a problem. You know, when somebody was out of work, they don't have a paycheck coming in and the rent's coming up and they're living paycheck to paycheck. So it wasn't just folks that normally would have subsidized rents. These were average folks that just didn't have a paycheck coming in due to COVID for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, you know, when it hit the whole household. So that was probably the largest bite, and the energy was kind of a large bite because we had the HEAT program and we were doing that anyway. And we had to make sure that we had enough in that program, which we still do. I'm going to get through this season with no problem.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. One is, I want to commend you for what I thought was an excellent presentation that you made before the housing task force back in December, relative to kind of what the status of many of your clients and potential clients are relative to housing and their need. And we also then, over the last 4 or 5 months, saw from the state and other sources a number of different studies about how, you know, how many people in the community are in that, you know, one paycheck away from needing some level of service.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm looking for where do you see potential gaps, unfortunately, with today's announcement at the federal level with the freezing of federal funds, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but given your knowledge of the population, what gaps do you see in service today? And then how do those gaps get exacerbated?
So relative to what has happened today or as of 5 o'clock when things froze, most of our major programs, and I think that came out in a press release today, and I did read the entire memo that he wrote, and exempted was things like Medicare, Social Security, the SNAP program, all of that. My understanding is that the free and reduced lunch program may be impacted, Section 8 and RAP housing may be impacted. And I did hear from a few folks from other towns today that it was in fact impacted when someone's rent was due today. So there are going to be some impacts from that. It was supposed to be temporary from what we're being told. I don't know how temporary it is or when it comes back online. So again, without the crystal ball, really tough to say, but the impacts in our area will be to those people that had rental assistance. It's called RAP, which is really an extension of Section 8, where they have an individual agreement with an individual landlord versus being in tenement Section 8 housing in some other town. And we do have folks in that situation. It affected one family that I'm aware of who was Afghan refugee, helped our troops out in Afghanistan, and the federal government was paying for them to live here. So there's gonna be a few like that. I haven't heard of any major pockets of problems yet. And I'm hoping there aren't, because it was said that it wasn't going to affect actual individual programs, but we will see. I'm sure it's gonna affect the Connecticut Food Share and some of the nonprofits we deal with, and that may have some implications for us down the road.
Okay. How about energy assistance? There's a good portion of that that's federally funded too, right?
So the way energy assistance works is that gets voted on at the federal government level. And then it gets sent to the state of Connecticut. They vote on it in September. And everybody gets, like, if they were approved before that, a placeholder of $1. So the state, my understanding is the state already has that money. So that shouldn't have any impact, at least for this season.
Got it. Well, I guess what I would look to both you as well as to Heather is that over that, we have 3 months to put this budget together. We'll know more in 3 months, kind of where we are, but we should at least bear in mind.
Yeah, well, as fast as things are moving, I'm sure we'll know a little bit more even in a week. Today, I heard of some things, but it was pretty fast moving, and I just don't have all those answers.
Right, I understand. All right, great. Other questions people have?
Just a comment. The executive order was stayed by a federal judge already.
Good.
I mean, I didn't know if you knew that.
I did not.
Okay.
I'm
It
not-
has been stayed
not
at the
surprised.
moment.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Right.
So what that means is it's gonna get litigated, right? Just like,
But we are looking at fiscal 26,
Yeah.
so we're looking at 18 months from now. So,
no, I'm well aware.
okay. Any other questions?
Quick question. So in your conclusion, second bullet, you indicated that there are no major building or maintenance project anticipated. Where are you located?
I'm located in the Youth and Family Services building. And I have an office there that's about 10 by 10, and it was all redone maybe 5 years ago. So there are no other expenses that I'm aware of.
I see, thank you.
Got it. Great. All right. No other questions? We'll jump ahead. Oh, Megan has a question.
Oh, and maybe, hi Sue, maybe you covered this in the presentation Bruce was referring to, and if that data somewhere, I'd like to see it, but I was just curious on just a snapshot of the folks that are coming to you. I mean, I know, you've got families, probably some older adults, so what does that look like?
So our elderly population and demographics continue to grow. That bell curve is still, really high up there with our elderly. So I'm going to say about 57% of our elderly are on energy assistance programs, and and that kind of follows through to other things. I've seen less new families this year on assistance and more elderly on starting with assistance. I have seen families that are in that Alice category, and we have quite a few of those in town. People are working. They may even be, both of them are working. But it's paycheck to paycheck. And I'm sure, as all of you've had those things. The water heater goes, the car breaks down, the mortgage is due, and our taxes went up a lot this year. So I've heard about, some folks really struggling. They didn't really budget properly, but some of them really just didn't have the money when it happened. So for instance, just yesterday, we had a family that called us for energy help because they had applied for the state energy help and had assumed they would get it. And, one of them had a little overtime, and they ended up $200 over the limit and were denied. And they had planned on getting energy assistance, so they didn't plan on having to fill their oil tank. So we help with that.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Good. Heather, you are up.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. Youth and Family Services. I'm just going to skip to third page. The budget overview for fiscal year 26. The department budget is up 3.31% over fiscal year 25, led by increases in salaries and benefits. And the benefits increase was 15,000.
I'm going to explain this page. A few years ago, youth and family budget was centralized into an off-budget fund, fund number 755. And that information is here separately for you to look at all of the line items. And what we do is we pay for it through various sources of funds. Number one is a general fund appropriation of 488,000. We also, they have Youth and Family Services has grants coming into it. They also service clients, so they have client fees coming in there. And of course, our appropriation. The grants have not really changed very much in the past few years, if you're used to looking at this chart. However, we have recently been talking about the opioid funds and all the funds that we're getting a lot of money from those grants that we're getting from them. And so $5,000 has been added to this budget specifically to cover for the salary expense of the staff members that spend time servicing opioids. So that one is new this year. So client fees, we take in about $100,000 a year. Sometimes that can be affected by the number of school programs that they're trying to administer versus the number of clients they're trying to see, but it has been fairly consistent over the past several years. So those are and the other thing I wanted to mention too is the income fund. So we have about 72,000. Does everybody understand the income fund, or does anyone want me to go?
Why don't you briefly?
Explain it again, okay. So at the end of the fiscal year, one of the things that we typically do as part of our year-end entries is we take a look at the Youth and Family Services budget. If they have a budget surplus, we sweep that money into the income fund. If they have a deficit, if something happened where they overspent their budget, we would take money from the income fund. So that, when we set that up, COVID happened and they couldn't perform a lot of the things that they had over the many years. So that fund grew fairly quickly. Now it's $72,000, and we have been every year using a portion of that to support the budget. So this year we're recommending $10,000. What that does is it keeps the amount of the general fund appropriation lower. So their budget is up, what did she say, 3.31%, but when we look at just the appropriation piece, that's up 4.87%. So to keep that manageable, we wanted to use 10,000 of the income fund toward that.
So I want to just briefly address the opioid fund. So due to the settlements, I mean, we all know the Sackler family, and there's been many other companies, even companies like McKinsey were sued, and there's been class action settlements. So all the towns in the state of Connecticut have been getting a portion of these settlements, and the emails just keep coming and saying, you know, you're going to be getting this. We have approximately 80,000, 80 or 90,000 right now in an off-budgeted fund that, you know, we do nothing with, other than I say to Heather, if you have programs, it's for programming and prevention. Heather came to us this year and said, I can probably attribute part of my salary to opioid prevention work. So if you want, we can offset the budget with that amount of money. Good idea. Makes sense. That's exactly how we're supposed to use the money. I think we've also used it. Have we used it for any programming, or?
We did a
Right.
training of all town employees. We had 21 town employees come. to
Right.
train.
So, so that's what that money is, just so everybody knows, and there's more designated, and we'll see how it is deployed over the next few years. I don't know if there's more coming. It seems every 3 months or so, I get a notification saying we're gonna get 3,000, we're gonna get 8,000, we're gonna get this, and it has accumulated.
Is the 5,000 then the salary offset?
No, that's a separate grant. We have a grant from BH Cares. Or is that?
The opioid, the 5,000 is for the opioid, is the salary offset. That's what we're gonna use the grant for.
Is any of the cannabis money allowed to be used for the youth?
Yeah, I mean, well, we've used the cannabis money. We're trying to use it for Mariners Way.
Okay,
But
but if you had to.
But that would
use
be
it
also, you could use
for
it for
that too.
prevention and programs also.
Leanne, page 3, budget overview,
Mhm.
it says benefits increase of 13,000.
Yeah.
No matter which way I subtract, addition, multiply, I can't come up with 13,000.
Okay, that's probably a rounding error. So let's see, 135 to 145 is about 10,000. You're correct, that's correct, that's 10,000.
Okay.
Typo is my fault, so it's okay. I'll make those things too.
Heather, do you want, just briefly, client fees, we have 100,000 in there for client fees. You know, where that number's been, where you expect it to be.
Yeah, it's been changing, and not increasing as fast as I projected it would prior to COVID. So I do believe that it's gonna go back up, because one of the impacts of people not qualifying for Husky anymore is they're being transferred over to high deductible insurance plans. And there are a lot of providers in the community, and along the shoreline community, that are no longer accepting insurance payments. So residents of Old Saybrook are gonna be looking to us for clinical services that accept their insurance, for one thing. So I do believe that the numbers of referrals will increase. We've been seeing that the last few months.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about the number at all.
Okay.
So the reason this is an off-budget department is because their funding comes from so many different areas that Leanne, about 4 years ago, I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago, said, let's put it all into over there, where the grant funds can go, where the client funds can go, and the town will make an appropriation of that number at the top into that off-budget fund, and then we'll spend it down, just like a normal budget. And again, if there's a surplus, it goes back into the income fund, and if there's a deficit. So that's why there's a dedicated fund for surplus or deficit for youth and family services. Just one other note, we did use a portion of the income fund to buy a new, we did not, oh, please,
It's
okay.
okay. Kate,
I thought we
but
did.
you found a deal, or you found a deal that was, we didn't need to use the money.
Okay, all right, good. I'm glad I found that deal. I don't remember.
Clap yourself on the back. So it just over the last, going to the income fund, over the last 3 years, have we been putting money into the income fund, taking money out of the income fund? What's been our history? Because that doesn't really
We
show.
have done a little bit of both, but mainly putting it in. Mainly put it in. I think 1 year we took some money out.
So is that why with the balance we have, you're comfortable taking 10,000 out?
Correct, yes.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. Thank you, Leanne. There's been no major staffing changes since the last time I presented. We have 4 full-time employees and 4 part-time. The 1 part-time program coordinator, we were able to increase through the ARPA funding. So they are currently at 31 hours. And the 1 part-time licensed clinician went from 28 to 3, plus 3, so 31 hours through the ARPA funding as well. So that's allowed us to provide additional programming for youth, and then as well as clinical services within the schools and the community. So department accomplishments, we received in October statewide recognition and award for Program of the Year for the Autism Spectrum Disorder Parent Support Group. And I do have to acknowledge I'm a little bit competitive, so I'm going to tell you that of the 9 or 10 YSBs in our region, we're the only ones who've won it in the last 10 years, and we won it twice, 2018 and 2024. So I'm really proud of the work that the agency does, and I think that kind of recognition is meaningful. And I hope you'll think so as well. We contracted for the Youth Voices Count survey to be administered in grades 6 through 12 to assess community need, identify early intervention, treatment, and environmental strategies. This was the first time it had been done since 2017, November of 2017, and at that time, we only were able to survey grades 9 through 12. So now, being able to expand it to 6 through 12, And it's a whole different kid, it's a whole different community since that time. We should be able to come up with some really good data that's local, where we can target with interventions some areas of vulnerability. And we'll definitely be sharing that information and celebrating areas of strength and community support as well. We hired a part-time bilingual educator through the ARPA funding to facilitate early literacy programs. And there was an increase of 15% in attendance at those early literacy programs during the summer due to the bilingual educator being there. And I know, Matt, you're always interested in that piece of it, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that to you. The program coordinator, the full-time program coordinator at our agency received certification as a prevention specialist this year, which is very important because that helps us apply for and potentially receive some very specific grants that we couldn't get without that. We have a multi-agency project right now with Lyme Youth Services Bureau and the Connecticut Department of Transportation to provide suicide prevention signage on the Baldwin Bridge. Hopefully that will be done by National Prevention Week in May. You'll all receive an invitation to that process. I just have to move something. Sorry. Okay, so the opioid settlement fund that Carl had mentioned, I just wanted to go through a couple of things that we've done with that money. The criteria for its use are very specific, and I appreciate that Carl has allowed our involvement and how that's expended. So the investing in youth prevention is always something that we're here to talk about for sure. And states and localities, you already know this, I'm preaching to the choir, supporting children, youth, and families by making investment in that, in effective programs. It makes a big difference, and we're starting to drill down to younger and younger grades. So we have some prevention programs in the Goodwin School that the kids don't know it's about prevention. They just think it's fun. But then we really are hoping to work with the school district to make sure that there's a prevention percentage of every health curriculum for every grade going forward, K through 12. So primary prevention efforts, the return on investment, conservative estimate is that for every $1 spent on prevention, it prevents $6 in healthcare and other associated costs. Some of the programs we've done here locally have been, I won't go through that part right there. 21 town employees in 2024 received training in opioid use awareness and naloxone administration. We also added Narcan to the town hall and youth and family services first aid boxes. So, and then we also informed all employees of the Good Samaritan Act so that anyone who was not comfortable or wondered, do I have to use Narcan if I'm in that kind of situation, would understand that it wasn't mandatory. They weren't required to do that. We developed training for the estuary on safe disposal and storage of medications because we know that there's an increased percentage of the population that's aging, and potentially disposal of medication to keep it out of grandchildren's hands or visitors is important. And we distributed doTERRA medication disposal bags. I meant to bring some tonight. I'll get next time. Lock boxes and lock and travel bags. So some of those supplies were bought through the opioid settlement fund. And we updated our treatment and providers resource directory that's available in person, in hard copy and online in Spanish and English. So some of our cost containment improvements for our process really is making sure we stretch every dollar as far as it can go by collaborating with all of our other regional YSBs. It's a very consistent process where we meet monthly and we meet on the state level quarterly. But developing, nurturing, and enhancing those relationships is very, very important, especially as leadership within schools changes, people retire, move away, or whatnot. It requires consistent effort and focus to maintain that. I'm sharing the Valley Shore Collaborative. I was put in that position within the last year, and it's a multi-provider organization where up to 40 different providers from across the state, not just our region, will meet here actually on Tuesday. And we talk about the efficiency of our service operations, how do we access things at low to no cost to be able to share with our residents, and how do we maintain fidelity to the state mandates to do the things that we're meant to do. So again, the regional YSBs, we have a lot of new directors in our region. People have retired or moved on. So we onboard directors in the process and policies that allow them to operate efficiently and effectively, sharing materials, curriculums, and training. We continue the intern training program for master's level clinical students. And this year, one of our staff members went from being an MSW, Master's of Social Work, to an LCSW, which allows us to take social work students from UConn, which is actually a really nice piece. And UConn reached out to us right away and asked how many we could handle. So I said it depends. So the work we do in action, I'd just like to bring a little color and personality into the training for you or the session. So you can see some of the faces and things that we do, and to know that your support of the work the agency does is really impactful and important. We do a lot of community service work. The youth organization raises some money for Shoreline Soup Kitchen and Pantry. We work very hard to engage them in civic responsibility exercises. And then we take them to different places around the state that they might not otherwise have an opportunity to go to. And in conclusion, then the budget is up 3.21%. The general fund appropriation is up 22.7 thousand, or 4.87%. The survey data, I'm expecting, well, I did just get the results last week. We haven't been able to do a deep dive on that yet. And our first presentation will be to the Board of Ed on, I think, February 25th. And then we're going to host community presentations, and I'd like to present to the Board of Selectmen as well. But the survey data is going to inform the direction of our programs in prevention education. So there's a science behind what we do. We do get a lot of information anecdotally from our contacts within the school and the kids we see, but we needed to have the actual numbers behind it. Current staffing levels are adequate for local need and youth and family, and community leadership support is important and very appreciated. So I want to say thank you.
Okay, questions that we have for Heather?
I got one question.
Okay.
On other supplies, every other year you go down and up and do a reason for that?
Yes, Lorraine is going to answer that one. Sure.
Yes. Well, these were some of the things that we took a look with Heather when we did the budget, and we like every year to make sure that, you know, if one budget line item is over, or one is under, you kind of just right size it to actuals, that's all. So that one has been running a little bit higher, so we moved it up. We also decreased purchase professional services by the same amount.
So, in 24, the budget was 6,119, and then the 25 budget was 2,500. Why would we drop it if it's, you know, it just looks like every other year it's higher? Why aren't we staying at a median level?
We made it closer to actual, which it has been. I don't recall why we lowered it last year. That was probably not a wise move, because we have actually spent closer to $6,000.
Yeah. Oh, and that's great report.
Thank you, Brad.
Questions people have?
I just want to make a comment. So we saw it with Sue. You're seeing it with Heather. You'll see it with Chris Costa over Saturday. While Heather's here, and I don't think Sue's here, I just want to say, I mean, we're getting to the end of your department head review, and we have super high quality people as our department heads. And I'm, you know, from IT to finance to Park and Rec, Youth and Family Services, Social Services, Land Use, Building Department. And, you know, I actually love these meetings because you guys get to see these folks in action and what makes our town so great. And it's just a comment, it's not a budget comment, but it's just high quality people running the departments. And that's why the town does so well, just from a reputational point of view, so.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment? I'm Mike Rafferty, I'm the current commission chairperson, and I'd like to dovetail your comments. You don't know what a gem you have in this position. She works tirelessly. I mean, it's not a 9 to 5 job. She starts at 8, 7, 6 in the morning and works until the day is done. So you really have a gem. I'd be remiss not to say that.
Thank you for your comment. George?
Like to commend anybody else, I mean, your accomplishments that you described were very impressive, so thank you again for that. But I do have a question though. So the same question I gave for food. So there were about 0.5% of your salaries in total are from ARPA funds. And so when will they run out and are you be asking for additional?
Sure. I think that at that time, what I'll be asked to do is to provide some data that shows how many more students we were able to see with the, and clinical services we could provide for the extra 3 hours for the, the part-time clinical person. And, you know, I'll need to be able to show that that increase was utilized well and that it would potentially be remaining constant. And then I would come forward and ask if we would be able to maintain that going forward. I think the total would be, it's less than 7,000 for the year for that number of hours, which is not nothing, but I would need to show that we could do that.
Other questions?
Question, Heather, going
Yeah.
to my favorite topic.
Yes,
Could you just talk beyond the bilingual educator that's funded through
Yes.
ARPA?
yes.
Can you just talk a little bit about what else Youth and Family is currently doing to provide access to services and
Sure.
how those programs are being utilized?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought me back around to that. So I meant to say that the new format for the bilingual educator going forward, we had trouble accessing a full-time or a part-time MSW. So I contracted with the school to hire 2 of their bilingual educators, part-time, who already have ties to the community and are familiar with those students and their families. So we will be able to spend down that amount, and they'll be attending PTA meetings, PTO meetings, and different kinds of programs and events. So Boost Lingo is our translation services, and that costs $101.73 a month. And we've actually used it in the last 6 months for a Russian individual, Ukrainian, and Spanish and Portuguese. So that's more, previously it had been really just Spanish. So there's certain months in the year where we use that. It's very heavily utilized, and there's some months where we don't at all. But around Christmas time, there was probably a 30% increase in the number of times we were able to access Boost Lingo and then successfully complete a conversation with folks who were trying to access our services. So there's that piece, and I think that piece and the bilingual educators is the most important, because, you know, we can translate our forms and whatnot, but it's not the same thing as someone, a live body, communicating with them in a way that reduces maybe the stigma of their coming in and gives them something familiar to connect to when they come in, when they're in a difficult place.
Thank you. So Carl and Mike both made really great comments about the services and your leadership in the department, and I echo those. And,
Thank you.
I care about this just because I want to make sure that all of our residents are able to take advantage of the great services. So do you feel that we're doing an effective job in having that door open? Are you seeing an increase in people of different backgrounds coming and taking advantage?
We are, and Sue could probably speak to this as well, but I think that we've come a long way and everything's evolving, and we're going basically as fast as we can. So I'm sure there are some times when there's a gap, but as soon as we become aware of that, we try to be flexible and adapt to meet that need. And this town is really very amazing in the way that information travels to us. You know, it's just very, you know, we had an intern in the school the other day. There was a need, one of the students, the school nurse reached out. We had a release of information, you know, and it happened very quickly. And by the end of the day, the supplies that child needed were delivered to the school and given to the mother in a very discreet fashion, so no one had to make it weird for anybody. So I really can't say enough about, you know, Sue and I talk on a regular basis, and Kelsey, and everybody works so hard to make sure that we're identifying need early and meeting it to the best of our ability. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
We had just a peek at the budget of the school system last Tuesday night, and one of the things that was in that was the curve relative to what's happening with the multilingual, or the need for English as a second language is continuing to increase. So I assume families in that situation are in that need. So we're still going up at this point.
Yes.
There's another area, seniors raising grandchildren also has become a national thing, and that's affecting our community at this point. it is really right ahead of that movement.
So we currently have about 7 identified families where the grandparents are raising the grandchildren as guardians or have adopted them. But there are several that are unidentified that we know of that live in multi-generational homes that have the primary parenting responsibility, which is a different subcategory of that. But often the other category that we see in our group is, and they can't apply for scholarships and funding for the kids because their income level is too high but it prevents them often from being able to retire or travel, any of the normal activities they might have wanted to do in retirement. But there's also a big barrier in someone several generations removed from the current curriculum within schools and the current technology use. And that's really where we work with them the most. I couldn't help my son with math, but I mean, really today I couldn't do any of that. So that's one of the biggest areas. And Brian's story at the Acton Public Library has a business where he volunteers time to teach anyone 55 and over to use the iPad that they got for Christmas or technology. But for grandparents raising grandkids, Power School and everything being done on the phone is it's a very big barrier.
Okay, George.
I'm sorry, it's a question about the grant part of your proposal. So I presume the DCF grant is just a given portion to the town, or do you actually apply for that?
It is, no, that's given to the State Department of Education and DCF.
And then Carl's already mentioned the opioid. So are there additional grants out there that you guys could apply for, but basically are not doing it because of just no capacity or capability or time or so on?
There's a lot of different reasons for it. Sometimes we may not have the infrastructure to implement some of the larger grants effectively. And then some of the smaller ones that we do have, obviously we apply for those as we can. But it's not because we don't need it. Some of it is our time, and Carl hired a grant writer from the town. We can certainly utilize them. Some of it's just having the time and space to find those, identify them, apply for them, and then figure out how we're gonna staff that program appropriately.
Fred?
How's the new van working out?
It's great. It's really, really nice. Thank you. It's safe and it holds 13 students. Yeah, everybody likes, and the heat works, which is very. Very nice.
Good for this time, yeah.
No.
And Brittany Eckert is here with Heather tonight.
Yep, and she's the new certified prevention specialist. So that was quite an accomplishment. I want to acknowledge that.
Anything else? Heather, thank you.
Thank you.
Brittany, thank you.
all.
Sue, thank you. Appreciate your time. We will move on to the land use department. Chris Costa.
Good job. Thank you.
She got your presentation.
So good evening, everybody. Chris Costa, Land Use Department. I will try to be brief, but obviously I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions. So the Land Use Department is requesting an increase of 4.8%, which is driven by salary and benefits, particularly a request as well for a part-time 15 to 19-hour weekly staff member to help assist with getting a lot busier. And we're taking on a lot more projects. We do have someone who is interested, who is currently on our staff, which probably would make a great fit. So I'm hoping that that would work out. To review our accomplishments, I do need to thank the board for your support and the grant matching appropriations you made for the 2024 as well as the 2023 Long Island Sound Future Fund grants that we received. In addition to that, we've received grant funding from Sea Grant for grant writing assistance. Now, as Heather was saying, we do have a grant writer on staff, but it's always great to get free money for grant writing, especially those resilience grants. We did get a DOT active transportation grant for safe routes to school, which actually Heather took over and made a youth and family services program. The one thing I'm not sure if everyone here realizes is it's not just these grants, it's other grants. So if Parks and Rec is applying for a grant, land use helps, economic development, so we're kind of always involved in many of the grants, whether it's for sidewalks or additions to a park, the permitting aspect of it as well. Administrative permits, we have 35 different types of permit applications. We respond to countless people coming up to the counter. Can I build a shed? Can I build a deck? Can I build a Home Depot? So we're all the way across the board with that, as well as the coastal management permits, flood permits, planning, zoning. Can I build an accessory dwelling unit? So we're all over the spectrum with scope and size of plans, or I'm sorry, permits. So in the last fiscal year, we approved 225 administrative permits and 18 flood permits. And that doesn't account for the people who come in that we consult with that they may not be able to get a permit for whatever reason. Commission reviews, so we do staff 9 land use commissions, 90 evening meetings, aquifer conservation or conservation historic district, housing task force, planning, inland wetland zoning board of appeals. And we also assist with other boards and commissions that may not be a part of our department, whether it's a tree committee or another group that Parks and Rec Commission or someone that needs our assistance, whether it's for permitting or just plan review or comments. We had 5 petitions to amend the regulations last year, or last fiscal year. We have countless preliminary discussions. We host educational sessions. We were also involved in the last year or 2 with coordinating the new land use commission member trainings. We try to offer as much as we can to get our commission members up to speed with the new statutory requirements. As far as planning, we're always planning. And we're doing some implementing. So we successfully completed in 2024 our update to our natural hazard mitigation plan, which is every 5 years. The foreshore resiliency plan, we're trying to wrap that up for public outreach this month and could close that out. We helped with Green Up, or our department sponsored Green Up Old Saybrook, a tree guide for residents as well as for department heads and for commission members. And we participated in other programs such as Mariner's Way, Revitalization Initiative, River Cog. We're always doing something with them, whether it's Thrive or US Spike Root System plans. So as far as cost containment, I'd like to thank the board. I know Larry Hayden and I are very excited to get this master file scanning project going. It's nice to be able to click and send versus go through paper files that are with carbon paper and try to decipher what's in them. So we're excited about that, and that will help us. And the part-time employee will help to assist with increased work volume. Capital requests, we have none at this time. Our next capital request will be the 2029 required hazard mitigation plan. But at this point, no capital requests. So our budget has remained pretty flat. Well, it has remained flat, I should say. It's been flat for several years. With the addition of salaries that are always adding to that volume, or that amount, I should say, and the part-time staff number will just help us to process more applications, get more projects done, and we're not proposing any changes to commission budgets. So I think that's it.
So,
Yes, go ahead.
did you say the person you're proposing for the part-time position currently works?
We have a clerk who might be.
So would she change her title or would?
I'm hoping she would be interested. That's kind of, she's interested, so she made one of the recording clerks. So we have the recording clerks for the commissions. So it's always kind of nice to have someone.
Do you have a title potential for this position or?
I have it upstairs, but kind of more of a land use assistant, something like that.
So, one of Chris's major complaints, and she doesn't complain much, but, is people come in, it's very busy up there. Just about any time of day, there's someone at that window. And they say, "Can I talk to Chris?" And she doesn't have time for that. So obviously, she makes the time for our citizens, but, what this person we're hoping to do will be someone who can be of great assistance at the window, lessen the load on Chris, so Chris can focus on the bigger picture type things. And probably do some other, obviously,
So
other.
maybe
things too.
draft, some enforcement letters, smaller stuff for signs and things like that. Because the one thing about, this is my 25th year with the town. And after 25 years, people go through it and they say, "Oh, I'm gonna call Chris," or "Call Chris." And then they call me and I'm swamped and they're like, "How high of a fence can I put? Where can I put it?" And like, and this is something, as Carl saying, this person would help to do as well as with our other staff.
Do you have those regulations online?
Which regulation?
Like the shed has to be 10 feet from the border or
Oh, yeah.
the fence has to be 6 feet high?
Yes, people don't read things, unfortunately. So we do have, and I mean, I have frequently asked questions. We do Saybrook events articles. But sometimes people just want to call and have a live person, which, I mean, I get it. You don't want that press 1, press 2 when you call someone. You want to call someone you know, or people you know, and get that answer.
Other questions, George?
Yeah, good question. So, I have the benefit of the spreadsheet I just sent out for the hours. So this additional person, would that basically replace the additional hours then line item?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Megan, do you have?
Well, that spreadsheet might help me. I was just curious when you say that, I mean, the workload, obviously with the 90 meetings and that sort of thing. I was just curious, what other staff is assisting?
Okay, so Sarah Lyons is our administrative assistant. She's 35 hours a week. Lynette Wacker is our assistant planner. She takes care of wetlands, historic district. I mean, I'm involved with them as well. And conservation attends their meetings. And she's 27 hours a week. And then we have our recording clerks for the boards and commissions.
Chris, one of the things, on the housing side, housing task force, the, plan needs to be updated in 26, and this being a budget for 26, is this, are you gonna do it internally, or is the funding for assistance and development, the plan coming out of capital non-recurring? What are we doing with that?
So
I don't know. I mean, would we hire to update it? or-
yes, I'm assuming this round it'll be a little bit less expensive because we're not reinventing the wheel, and the housing task force would go through and do that. But we used Tyke Consulting the last time, so I think we could help our task force to go through.
It was not terribly expensive to develop the plan, so to renew it, I'd imagine 5 or 10,000. I don't
I'd say
know.
we're at 10,000.
So I'm just wondering whether we want to put it into general fund budget, or whether we want to take it out of
It'd be
capital.
a one-time cost, so I'd almost prefer not to.
Okay. Just
Um,
want to make sure we have it somewhere. Brad?
So there's a sign down on Route 1 that I find very offensive towards you. Can't you, can't you enforce that because of the fact that the sign is bigger than the requirements?
So there's a little backstory to that. That was referred to our attorney. And October and November, I really don't want to get into all the details. But
I'm saying this to protect you, or I was offended that they put your name out there the way we did it. I mean, if it was outside, I might have looked it down for you.
So, yeah, so this guy, is not in compliance with the zoning regs. He had been repeatedly sent over the course of the fall, and I know you're a different question, but, emails from our lawyer saying, hey, remove the sign, remove the sign. At the end of the day, we were getting no response from an attorney. I then actually I don't know, I got a
the
different
property
email.
owner contacted you.
Oh, he
because
contacted
I didn't
me.
respond
I
at
said-
the request of legal counsel.
And I was able to get in touch with the attorney. Now, for some reason, our attorney was sending emails that didn't get through, and my email did get through, so there was an immediate connection. There are attorneys involved, but this guy is also someone who throws names around and says, my attorney this and my attorney, and that's not his attorney. In fact, he mentioned a local attorney who says, I don't represent him. I mean, it's a recorded meeting, so I want to be careful what I say. But in terms of enforcement of the larger temporary sign, right now, we're just gonna let Matt Willis at Halloran and Sage handle this. I think that's Chris's.
Matt and I are working on it.
So,
Okay.
but the answer is yes. Obviously, it's an obnoxious sign, probably an illegal sign.
Oh, she's just done a good job for 25 years, and I hate to see her name
I know.
posted like that.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to consider the source, and I think people in the town probably are.
I hope so.
John, a question about the Chaplain Beach grant. Was that the same one that was gonna study the floodgates down there?
So yes, so that's the 2024 Futures Fund. We were awarded that. It's from Chapman Beach in Westbrook. Westbrook is our partner to pretty much Indiantown. The total project is about 500,000. It'll be in the end with the match and what the towns put in. Thank you again for the match. So right now, we actually already asked for an extension because they wanted us to hire someone in January to get the project started, but we have this RFP process and certain things that we need to do. So we have a grant extension that we've already submitted. And we hope to make a decision by February 17th and have someone hired by February 24th is our deadline. And that person needs to be working on this by the 24th. So it's a pretty aggressive schedule, but it does include the Chalker Beach Tide Gate. There'll be some additional hydrodynamic modeling, marsh migration studies, beach nourishment, erosion. It's highly technical.
But the net effect is hopefully they'll have less flooding then at.
So the hope is that we'll get enough information that we could use that information to put some strategies to stop flooding. The problem is that we can't there's a lot of great ideas and possible solutions for flooding, but if we don't have the data to supply DEEP or other agencies to get the permits, that's really been a stumbling block. So since I've been here, the Chalker Beach Tide Gate and other areas in town that have flooded have been ongoing and a problem, but unfortunately you just can't go out and get a permit without having, they'll have marsh migration, there's some, I think, bird studies, plant studies. It's pretty intense.
Okay. Anybody else? Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for all you do.
So, I'll take most of the WPCA.
Good night.
That's nice. On WPCA, page 3, obviously, this is just a minimal salary increase. All we have right now, because we mostly have an inactive program, is one part-time financial person who makes sure that the town pays what we need to pay and gets reimbursed what we need to get reimbursed. And that's Gracia. Gracia is here right now. We do not have our program administrator. We're not in need of one right now. But we are in phase testing for phase 3. So at the high school. So we're scheduled to do a water test in March and April and put down sod in May. The digging that many of you may have seen over there was basically a stripping. I remember at the Board of Ed, we were talking about this 5 years ago, I don't know, 3, 4 years ago.
At least.
And drip tubing was installed, but before the drip tubing was installed, they did some modeling. The whole high school property basically has had groundwater monitoring going on to determine if in fact the groundwater was low enough. And when they do the computer modeling, they put in certain gallonage that would be inserted into the ground, and whether the mounding of the groundwater would be sufficient for, it's all kinds of science. The groundwater has to stay a certain level below the amount of water that's actually coming into the ground, so that water can leach properly. So what happened over at the high school is in the northwest corner, the high school is being broken up into 4 quadrants. The back field, everybody's familiar with the back field. So that would be the northern part of the property, the western part of the property, right? Yeah. That field is split into 2. So let's call that zone 1 and 2. The baseball field is zone 3 and 4. Originally, the test was going to be for zone 1 and another test in zone 4. However, we were able to convince DEP that the soils that are eventually going to be used in the ground where the drip tubing will dispense into are going to be exactly the same. So therefore, there's no need to do 2 tests, one over there and one over there, which was great because we had a lot less disturbance, okay? So the drip tubing went in, it is installed. And by the way, that is permanent. If this is the solution to down the line for the remaining 500 to 600 homes, it'll be that drip tubing that was installed last December, that will be in place then. It doesn't need to be reconfigured again. The engineers have almost 99% certainty that it will work, because the soils that were installed, they were actually installed, are perfect for leaching. In fact, they anticipate that they will only need 2 zones potentially to do the entire project. So it would only be the backfield. My understanding from the schools, and this is just a side benefit, is that northwest corner of the field was frequently wet anyway. Even when it was dry out, it might be soggy. That's what I've heard. That field will never be like that again. It will drain perfectly and it's going to be resodded. And if in fact, after the test, they determine a certain amount of gallons can be inserted into the ground, they anticipate it will only be that back field that would ever be disturbed. And at this point, it would only be the other half of that field. At the end of the day, they anticipate that, well, DEP is requiring that about 100,000 gallons of water a day will have to go into the ground. DEP makes you model a lot more than what will likely actually happen. And so there is high confidence that one, maybe two areas of that backfield, probably two areas will have to be dug up. Now, that's where you see research and testing results to be compiled for the deep. We anticipate this test will be complete in May. I don't know, bullets 4 and 5 on page 5, I have, we've had, this has been in the making for so long that I don't know when this will happen. I don't know if it's 26, 27, 27, 28, 28, 29, honestly. When we send things up to DEP, sometimes we don't hear anything for 6 months, nothing, not a thing. And then they'll come back and it took us probably 5 years to get where we are with this test. So, you know, I don't know what the timing is, but you saw the debt service schedule on Saturday, which plays into this. On page 7, this is probably more information, or not, this is probably the information you want to know. So we anticipate the test is about a $1.5 to $1.8 million test. We anticipate the test, there's high probability that it'll be successful. We are using the authorization that was approved in 2009. There was a $43 million authorization. We've spent of that $43 million authorization.
26.
We have not spent 26 million. We've not spent $26 million.
For the subsurface,
For the
the
septic.
43 was ostensibly for, everyone was gonna get
So
subsurface.
you're
We've
saying,
done 1,200.
yeah, so $26 million of the 43 has been appropriated?
I think we figured 23 to 26.
Okay, all right, so let's assume that's the number. We are anticipating, so anyway, we're applying through the Clean Water Fund, State Fund for reimbursement. Actually, because this is a planning test, this actually has a higher reimbursement rate. So that 1.7 million will be reimbursed at 55%, not 25%. So, and we are using the WPCA fund, the reserves that we've used for working capital over the years. And we're using that money for the test. At the end of the day, we expect that WPCA fund to have a balance of approximately, at the end of this test, after reimbursement, to be net positive $200,000 or so, maybe something like that, down from 900,000, but after the reimbursement of 55%. This was done through Fuss and O'Neill. They were basically a design build on the test, so they bid it out and are doing the test. That's just me rambling through this. This is probably the least fun moment of the night after hearing from social services and family services. This is the WPCA. What I anticipate is that rear field will look perfect in May. It will be playable in the fall, and you'll see no other disturbance there for I don't know how long after that, because I don't know when anything will get approved.
Carl, can I,
Yes.
first of all, I just want
Yeah.
to, what confused me a little bit on page 7 was in the first bullet, it says that PCA fund is at 80,000, or that really should be like 800 or something. Is that right? Okay, I just was trying to match up with what was going on. So let me see whether I could do a quick synopsis, just so I understand what you just said, which is we currently have about 850,000. We're gonna be taking on this $1.7 million cost. We're gonna be reimbursed by the state at some level, 920,000. Balance of it being paid for out of the fund, and at the end of the day, that fund will still have somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 left. Is
Yeah.
that kind of where we're at?
Yes, because we also have pending reimbursements of 300,000, right? That's what it says here.
This was the one that we're waiting on.
Okay, the grant,
The reimbursement.
the grant for the 25%. They calculate the total project cost based on eligible expenses. The DEEP has found them eligible. And that is approximately 2.2 million. They work the 55% grant off that. And that 55% grant returns back to the town about 1.2 million and change. The town's share is 1.700,000. I mean, it's 1 million.
Rachel, we're talking about the 300,000 that you submitted and we're waiting for. How much is that? That's
What happened with we submitted a grant, similar to this in January of last year. When we called to find out why we weren't getting our money, they informed us that there was an additional amendment to Fuss and O'Neill's contract that represented the remaining work that needed to be done to get to where we are today. Or,
But the question is, I forgot, how much are we waiting for from them? About 300,000, that's what the question is. On the first grant that we're waiting for, how much are we waiting?
we are not getting that at all. That is dead. That has been included in this.
Okay, all right.
Because DEEP said no,
Okay.
because you can have another $1 million if you know.
So will we?
So
run a
this
chart here?
this represents what DEEP finds eligible and what they will reimburse to the town at 55%.
Right.
I have been informed that as soon as this goes through there, and they have this now, when it goes through their committee, which
Okay.
takes between 4 and 6 weeks,
Okay.
that I can requisition immediately all the money we have spent to date. And so we will get whatever that number is at that point. We will get 55% ACH in the door.
Okay. So we do expect at the end of the day to be net positive. At the end of the day, after everything is spent, net positive 250, 300 in that WPCA reserve fund. That's the wash.
That's the bottom line. How we get there might be two different.
And because there were some prior work and then there's this work and it's kind of all together. So.
You're dealing with deep.
Yeah, well.
All bets are off.
Okay, other questions people have about WPCA? George?
Can I just have a sort of very naive question, so it's your understanding of the WPCA program in total, right? So this is phase 3. So presumably the phase 1 and phase 2, do you anticipate a phase 4?
No.
So starting before phase 1 even started, there was a set number of homes that needed.
Correct.
Septic? Is that what septic is?
Or, yeah, only
Something.
septic.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and so phase 1 and phase 2 treated a bunch of homes?
Yes.
They were done?
Yes.
And now this phase three treats the rest, which is like 600.
Yes,
And when that's done, we're.
we're done.
done.
So, yeah, my first volunteerism in this town was 1999 on the WPCA. That was the first board I served on. And that was before any work had been done. But about 1,800 homes total.
Yeah.
1,800 approximately, I shouldn't even say homes. Locations, because some of them were pieces of land that didn't need to be upgraded. Some of them were code compliant already. So we didn't complete work on 1,200 homes, but we've completed work either changing the septic field, changing the tank, new tank on, I want to say what, Gracious, 700 or 800 homes maybe, or
More or less, it's,
about,
the easiest way to explain it is exactly, it's 1,200 homes that are upgrade compliant out of the 1,800
yeah, there you go.
or 2,000 that were initially identified.
But not every home needed, and not every home, some people did it on their own. They did not for the 2% money. But this has been in the planning stages, as you know.
Right.
Barbara Maynard first started the WPCA, and it's an authority, let's not forget, it's an authority, and they have assessed liens on properties. And they had some very difficult meetings back in the day where they had to come up and actually tell homeowners that as an authority, we've done the work, and now we're going to put a lien on your house, and we have tax collections in May and November for those remaining homes.
So the particular home has not been contacted that they need to do something, they're basically off the list, is that?
Say that again,
If
Jim.
a particular home has not been contacted that they need to upgrade. their-
So every home has been contacted, like not everybody, so some folks say, I don't want to be part of the program.
I see.
And they might do it themselves, and there are remarkably a very small handful. We've had incredible compliance with this program. For a program that is unpopular and people don't feel like their home is polluting Long Island Sound, we've had incredible compliance. There are 10 or 15 homes total, maybe, that people have said, I'm not doing it.
Right.
Which is pretty remarkable given the total number. Eventually those homes are going to have to do the work, whether the home sells or whether there's an enforcement action or whatever it is.
I'm sorry, can I have one more? So this last bit, phase three, the idea is that we're gonna basically create a service for them that will go to a treatment plant somewhere, and then the water gonna go to the high school.
Yeah, so we've looked citing, there's the Ocean State Job Lot property next to this. And there's obviously space between the school and where we might have to cite something, but the quote unquote package plant, let's call it that, is truly the size of probably a 4-bedroom colonial house at this point. You're not looking at anything massive. To give you an example, the Big Y and Coles, if you look at it from the road, all the way on the left is their package plant, and you wouldn't even notice it. It's part of the building. And it looks like just an addition onto the building. And that's what you're looking at for this, is something that is basically housed in a footprint that is about a 4-bedroom colonial house, something like that.
But we're digging a piping from every house to that building.
To a collection system, not every house, but the houses that remain. Yeah. Believe me, I know.
Just this third act. Third phase. What, just roughly, what area does it cover?
Chalker Beach.
So we just Chalker Beach?
Well, a lot of Chalker Beach, a little bit of Great Hammock, on the Great Hammock, a little bit in Indian Town. And that's about it.
Saybrook Manor
Saybrook Manor,
and some Plum Bank.
some Plum Bank, yeah, right.
Have those people been notified?
Yes.
They know?
Alright.
Question, I've asked in the past about the staffing for WPCA, and I realize that we don't need to do something in the next year, but we spent time on Saturday talking about keeping the budgeting, the debt service smooth. What are we thinking about how we're gonna staff the office? Because this is gonna be a temporary timeline again, or, no, I mean, we've had the position vacant for the last
Yeah.
2 years, I wanna say, 3 maybe?
Two budgets.
About a year
Two
and a half,
budgets,
2 years.
so yeah, just wondering what our thoughts are as we prepare, so we don't have that spike where all of a sudden we're adding a position.
Yeah, so, I'm not certain what will be needed, but I do know that once you have a system up and running, there's O and M to that. There's no question about that. In fact, you'll need operators, probably 2. But honestly, you're probably talking 5 years from now, I'd say.
So we'll deal with it, yeah. Okay.
And some of that will be built into the cost of payments to the town, by the folks who are affected by this.
Okay, any more questions, WPCA? Hearing none. Thank you, Geisha. Thank you, Carl. Next on our agenda is, we had Saturday, Leanne presented to us the idea about funding mechanism.
Thank you, Geisha.
to Maintain the reserves, build reserves for the vehicles as well as for heat pumps at the library. Leanne, you want to just do a 2-minute reminder what it is for people who don't have it in front of them?
Yes, so, last year, or this fiscal year, I should say, in the police budget, there's just under $90,000 that is used or has been used to pay for the financing of the vehicles. That's been paid off. So this fiscal year that we're working on, fiscal year 26, this is a proposal to move the money from the police budget to the capital line item where we have everything else in the amount of 90,000. Then, once the budget is approved, a referendum, we would transfer that to an off-budget account so that we could use it and let it accumulate or use it for the purchase of police vehicles, so that the budget will not, goal is to keep the budget flat. Similarly, to do the same thing with the library heat pumps, we had $20,000 in the library budget. We would move it to the capital account and then transfer it off to an off-budget account, and then use those monies when we need to make repairs to the heat pumps. So those are the 2 capital moves. And then in addition to that, at the end of the year, we have our annual funding mechanism for outside services, where they take the amount of money we earn for the use of the cars and we bring it back into the police budget. Last several years, the police budget has actually already had a surplus in it. Bringing these monies in actually increases that surplus. So we are saying in this recommendation to first make sure that the fuel budget is $40,000. So if it's 50,000, we take 10,000, make it 40,000. And then whatever's left over, to also put that into the police vehicle account. So we could use the money from the outside services that's using our vehicles to save for future vehicles. So 3 pieces, 2 capital moves and 1 change to a funding mechanism.
And just to be clear, the funds above that, so using Leanne's example, if it was 50, take 10, that funding is right now just comes in as general fund surplus that falls to the bottom line that gets distributed. So that right now, what we're saying is we're really just kind of directing whatever that surplus would be to the vehicle purchase fund.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any questions before we move this and vote on it?
Could you just explain the surplus part again?
I'll let Leanne do it, because I know I have a budget.
The surplus part, so the last
How would
one,
you arrive at surplus? I'm a little confused. I
So-
like surplus.
I know. So I'm just talking specifically about the police budget. Police budget in the last few years has, just that one line item budget for the police has produced a surplus. Then with our funding mechanism for outside services, which is an off-budget account, the chief has done a calculation that says, we use the vehicles for X amount of man hours times $25 or whatever it is that they charge. And then that money comes back onto the general fund, pays for gas and vehicle maintenance and things like that. But we bring the whole amount, whatever it is, and historically it's been like 50, 60, even 90,000 one year. We had a really exceptional year. So if the police budget already has a surplus in it, they haven't spent all their monies that were budgeted, that makes that surplus higher, and then all of that drops to the bottom line. And we've had large surpluses in the past year, so we're just saying, before it even gets there, let's put it aside to save for vehicles in the future.
It's an intercept of some of those funds.
I just don't understand the necessity for the advantages. I mean, other departments will have surpluses. You could look at specific items or line items in a lot of departments. So what really is the purpose for it?
Well, we've had this funding mechanism for several years. Before we had this funding mechanism, the money stayed in outside services. And then, the Board of Finance determined that outside services are using police vehicles for those jobs, and the general fund is not getting any advantage for it. So we created this funding mechanism, but as it turns out, a lot of money is coming in, and we don't necessarily need all of that money to offset the expenses. And we're saying that the biggest cost is the financing or the purchase of vehicles, and let's just keep it off budget and stay over there and help to pay for the vehicles. Oh, I'm confused.
Just
You
saying,
guys are-
it's
I'm
a
sorry.
unique situation because while the police, if they only did patrol, might use $50,000 worth of gas, they're actually using more like $80,000 worth of gas because of all the private road jobs. So if they use $80,000 worth of gas, we're just saying, and the contractors are getting charged more than gas. They're getting charged for the use of the vehicle, the cop, so there's money to be made. We're saying balance out the gasoline budget and take the rest. Don't put it in the police, don't just put it all in the gasoline line item. Just balance out the gasoline line item budget and take whatever remains from the outside services and put it into the, future investment for vehicles. Now, I don't know if there's another way to do that, not to confuse the issue. If the police department is running a surplus anyway, should we take all the outside vehicle money and dedicate it as the Board of Finance feels is appropriate and balance that gasoline line from within the police department budget? I mean,
You could vote on it every year. So right now, I just do it. It happens, the transaction is approved by the Board of Finance. If you wanted to think about it every year and say, well, maybe we need it all, maybe we don't need it all, you could do that too.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
that's true. I mean,
Before we get this too confused, are we ready for a motion and vote? Leanne did provide us a motion last time. I will,
You want me to read it?
nope, I got it.
Okay.
I'll move to approve funding mechanisms for creating two new reserves, one in the amount of 90,000 for the police vehicle reserve and one in the amount of 20,000 for the library heat pump reserves. The amount of these reserves will be reviewed each budget season. Further, to amend the outside services funding mechanism at the end of FY25 as part of the year-end closing process as outlined by Leanne and above in the memo. I only have one, I need a second.
Second.
There's a second. Only have one question. We have already an outside, no, we already have a police.
Vehicle, we have, that's where it would go to the police vehicle purchase line item.
Right, so why are we setting up in the motion a second one?
Oh, I didn't know, it's going into the one that's already there.
Well, it says to set up.
That's for the library, don't have one. Let me see. Yeah, I have it back. Maybe I wordsmithed it incorrectly.
What I see
Let's
is
see. To approve.
one in the, creating two new reserves, one in the amount of 90,000, and then one in the amount of 20,000.
Mhm.
But we already have one of those reserves.
Well, so what we have is an off-budget fund.
Right.
It's not, it was used to facilitate, it's actually what we call an exchange fund. It was used to facilitate the purchase of the vehicles, because when we took out financing,
So,
okay,
so you're
So I said-
distinguishing between fund and reserve.
correct.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
I got it. Okay, George?
Simple question, so at this point, it's potentially possible that every year going to the police car
Reserve,
could be potentially more than 90,000.
correct.
Are we gonna cap that reserve?
Well, I would say it's within the Board of Finance's purview. So if the fund grows to a level that is unnecessary, yeah, I would say,
I mean, in 5 years, it could easily be over.
but you'll be buying.
You can buy cars and
Sure, sure, I get it.
But I thought about that, actually. I mean, if this fund got too large and this board said it's unnecessary to have 400,000 in that account right now, we're only gonna spend 200,000. You know,
Right.
I mean, it can be changed and,
Sure.
yeah,
Just like the DPW reserve, we just actually increased that from 100 to 125 because we felt we might
Yeah.
be spending more because of the prices.
but it can be changed.
You make the policy, we change the policy.
No, I've been on this board for barely a year and a half, and there's already some, these minor programs that just historical knowledge is gonna be gone real quick. Right, that's the word, right?
Well, it's all written down in motions and policies, yeah.
Okay, River, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, motion passes. Next item is any additional discussion that the board may have on our general government budgets. Anybody have any?
I did hear something in the streets. It happened to be somebody that's a part of the Parks and Recreation Department, so I don't want to speak for them, but as we talked about these funding mechanisms, I believe they may be contemplating this, I haven't gone there, raising the fees for the parking at the beaches, at our two local beaches, adding a $7 or $10 to that fee is what I heard, may be contemplated. And so a member was saying, why don't we take $2 from that and put it into the sinking fund for them? You know, the same thing we did with the mini golf. So they haven't necessarily proposed that yet, but I think that's something that maybe they should consider and we should consider.
Yeah,
As we keep.
we're gonna make a recommendation on revenues to that maybe will not require Park and Rec to raise any fees.
Okay, right.
Any more talk about getting a scale at the town dump?
So, is there any more talk about it? We have to get a final design. And it has to go through inland wetlands to get a final design. So,
We need it desperate.
and I would hope by this year that we can have a final design so we can start building it out.
Yeah, my pickup truck used to be $5 and they tried to hit me 25 yesterday.
Yeah.
For some debris.
They tried, so what, you wouldn't pay them?
Pardon?
You wouldn't pay them?
I didn't, I went over and saw, what's his name, he said, look at my load, what do you think? He said $10.
Yeah.
So I went back. But it's just, it's the principle of it all. I mean, I think they've gone crazy. $25 is a stiff fee for a pickup truck.
Negotiation process.
Who knows? Okay, so now we'll go back to comments from board members. We may be in that category already. Any other comments that board members have? I'd like to just raise the issue. This has been a great month of January. We have worked very hard. We've gotten a lot done. Thank you to Leanne and to Carl for getting all the department heads here, giving us both boards an opportunity to hear. Board of Selectmen, the budget is in your hands. We won't see it until after you're done, which is gonna be sometime after, just before or after the 15th. I say all that in preparation of, do we need a meeting next Tuesday night? Is there any other hot item that we would need to meet on?
Want that delay the first of the month's budgets for,
Well, so we'll push that to the third week, our second meeting in the month.
We have the auditors coming for the second meeting in the month, and then I can certainly send out the financials sooner by email if anybody wants to look at them before that meeting.
So, you and the board? Take the meeting off? All right,
You guys are crazy.
why don't we plan on that, and we will plan to meet again on the first?
Can I just mention a few things?
Yay.
And
You certainly may,
Yeah.
however, from the perspective of this is a special meeting and a special meeting agenda, so I'll call on you.
comments
Okay.
from the board.
So we're gonna
There you go.
cancel,
As
we're
an
gonna cancel
explanation of
next
board
Tuesday.
member.
So.
No, before you go there, George.
Oh, forget you.
Just a quick question in terms of, is there a schedule when the Board of Education and the Police Department budget will come back?
Well, the Board of Education, I believe, is voting on their budget tonight. But it is not due to us until March 1st. So I figured that we would try to get them either towards, if we have the auditors coming in on the 18th, then it would probably be March 4th or something like that, that we would have the Board of Education. So am I backing things up? When, we have a public hearing somewhere.
On the 11th, so we're
March
gonna have, the 4th is a Board of Finance meeting. We were supposed to have it that night, but the superintendent asked if we could reschedule it, and we agreed to, because he had a conflict. So it's gonna be March 4th, public hearing March 11th, and then the following, whatever that is, March 18th, another Board of Finance meeting. So 3 Tuesdays in a row in March, so that'll make up for the one you're canceling tonight.
I hear that.
what about the police? When are they coming back?
March 11th.
Well, that's the question.
March
For this
4th.
board. Would we like to have, now that the police commission has voted on the budget, would we like to have the police in for this discussion on the budget? I hear at least 2 people saying yes to that.
Yeah, because we didn't really have a chance.
Correct. All right.
And that was just a proposal. That
So why
wasn't
don't
their
we-
real budget.
So I will, the chief did reach out and asked me when we would like to see him. I'm going to, he asked, I think, about making a presentation. So my response, I believe, will be, we will be inviting him and whomever from the police commission to come to our March 4th meeting, at which we will discuss the budget, but not look for a presentation.
Right. We don't need a presentation. All we really need is for them to tell us what's different from what went over the first time and then let us ask questions.
Got it. Sounds good to me. Jerry, do you have all that?
Sure.
So to have the meeting, the town meeting, do we need a meeting before that?
To have the public hearing, no, we don't need a meeting before that, because the Board of Finance can
That's
make
just a public
changes
hearing on the budget.
afterwards, yeah, or whenever. we
It's a
want to.
requirement of the charter.
All right, thank you all very much. Have a good night. Very quickly. Oh,
Yes.
sure.
Doing the motion to adjourn.
Yeah, no. Carl is gonna have
Darn, you didn't move fast enough.
comments from Carl.
Very quickly, the Old Saybrook Land Trust is looking to acquire some land. We have a open space fund that has about $250,000 in it, maybe 220. It's been that way for a very long time. We haven't put money in, it's just been there. If we were to buy the David Brown property, we would use that. That's about 100,000. The land trust is looking to buy some land. I went to a Saturday presentation on the preserve, and there were a bunch, the land trust was there, and they made a point to say, we're doing a fundraiser because we want to buy this land for $30,000 behind the Old Saybrook Racket Club. They're gonna give us some information. But I told them the town has some money and we could probably assist with this. They're a great organization. They don't have a lot of money, but they want to buy some open space, and the Racket Club wants to sell it. So the Board of Selectmen is going to discuss that at our next meeting, or a meeting coming up. And it'll come to you guys at some point for a blessing. The fund is already designated for open space. So I think technically the money can be spent for that once it's been approved by the Board of Selectmen, but we'll discuss it. Okay?
Is that landlocked?
I don't know enough about it right now, okay? The tree committee is doing a grant. They're trying to do a tree audit of a number of roads, Essex Road, Ferry Road, Springbrook Road, Elm Street, Lynn Street, Pennywise Lane, I didn't put that in there, Sheffield Street, Old Boston Post Road, Chalker Beach Road, Baum Avenue, and Maple Avenue, which is a nice sampling of the town. The grant, the amount that they got from Save a Tree is $21,710. They solicited 3 bids, and that's good for our charter to do that. You can solicit bids under 25,000. There's a 50% match to this. So the Board of Selectmen tonight.
Can you just share with them just 5 of the bullets? I mean, it's unbelievable what they do. They're gonna identify trees, they're gonna pound on them with a hammer, they're gonna give you the name. I mean, it was unbelievable, the amount of work they're going to do and identify every single tree it was comprehensive.
The following data will be collected for each tree: species, diameter, condition, good, fair, poor, critical, dead, observations, risk rating, general tree, it goes on, location with a GPS location, and recommendations for plant healthcare. Are there overhead wires? Is the sidewalk lifting? All kinds of stuff. So it's a 10,000. We voted tonight at the Board of Selectmen to recommend it to the match. That would have to go to a town meeting. I just want to tell you that we did that tonight.
Is the match, so the match is already in an account, and so it does
No.
not need to go, so
Nothing.
does that need to come here?
It will come to you for blessing. If we get the grant, we'll take it to a town meeting. Okay? And lastly, Downs Construction, which they did the police station, they do a lot of design build work. They gave me a quote on the Public Works Garage for phase one, another phase one, pre-construction services. Pre-construction services including meetings with the project team and other town bodies as may be necessary. So I assume with Lynette Wacker, Inland Wetlands, Bill Claffey to determine town needs. Their fee includes a comprehensive budget based on the conceptual plans provided by an architect. Rouse Architects, they've brought onto the team for this. Their fee includes assistance to determine any issues with the constructability of the project, cost management items to manage the overall budget, pre-construction and construction schedule. And so that is for $15,000 that they quoted today. This is what I was going to suggest. I brought it up to Leanne earlier. Bill Claffey, doesn't look like we're having a lot of snow yet. And he's down 2 guys on his staff. It's 15,000. He'll probably have it in his budget by the end of the year. It just wouldn't be surplus at the end of the year. And I was going to suggest that we allow this to be paid for out of the Public Works budget.
Before the end of the year.
Yeah.
So it doesn't drop the surplus.
Right. It will not, like, I would suggest we do it relatively soon. and move forward with it. And
You got the money, it's in the budget.
yeah, he certainly is. He certainly has 15,000 in a personnel line item. There's no question about that. Probably more than that already.
So I was over at the town hall there the other day and,
DPW?
yeah, and that's what I meant. Could they put the dog pound at the police station since they run it? Even if they did a small separate building? I mean, they don't house that many dogs. When I was there was no dogs, no cats.
So I
And
don't
then-
know if it'll go there,
And
but
then that would give them more room. over there.
Senator Needleman is talking about, perhaps putting, a newer pound up at the regional, the transfer station up there where we take our garbage, and I'd much rather go to a regional system
Okay,
where we just,
I just
so
thought you could get them out of there. Give me work.
I don't disagree with you one bit, and I don't know how often they even have dogs, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no dogs, no cats.
So, if this gets upgraded, it will likely not include a dog pound.
Great.
So, that's all.
Any questions? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
Thank you all for your hard work this January.
Thank you.